Number 8. The Mushroom Mastermind. Ever feel like you're just going through the motions? Like some unseen force is dictating your life choices? Well, for the poor ants infected by the Ophiocordyceps fungus, this isn't a philosophical quandary, it's a horrifying reality. Imagine a sinister microscopic puppet master taking over your brain, turning your very body into a mobile fungal farm. These aren't your garden variety toadstools, folks. These are highly specialized parasitic fungi with a taste for ant brains and an uncanny ability to manipulate their host's behavior. It starts subtly, probably with the ant minding its own business, foraging for crumbs or gossiping with its ant buddies. Do ants gossip? Let's assume they do for dramatic effect. Then, fungal spores latch on, burrowing into the ant's exoskeleton. From there, the insidious takeover begins. The fungus doesn't just kill the ant outright. That would be too pedestrian. Instead, it infiltrates the ant's nervous system, hijacking its motor controls. Think of it like a biological remote control, but instead of changing channels, it's forcing the ant to embark on a one-way trip to its doom. The truly disturbing part. The fungus compels the ant to leave its colony, that bustling hub of ant society, and seek out the perfect environment for fungal reproduction, typically a humid spot high up on a leaf or twig. This isn't a leisurely stroll in the park. It's a forced march dictated by fungal will. Once the ant reaches the fungus's chosen location, the manipulation reaches its crescendo. The ant is forced to clamp its mandibles down with a death grip on a leaf vein, ensuring its body remains in the optimal position. Then, the fungus erupts from the ant's head like a grotesque crown, ready to rain down spores and continue its reign of terror on a new generation of unsuspecting ants. So, next time you see an ant, just remember, there might be a fungal overlord pulling its strings. Sleep tight. Number 7. The Suicidal Grasshopper. You know that feeling when you just want to dive headfirst into the nearest body of water? No. Well, good for you. But for grasshoppers infected with the horsehair worm Paragordius tricuspiditis, this suicidal urge is not a metaphor, it's a parasitic imperative. These long, spaghetti-like worms live their adult lives reproducing in aquatic environments. Problem is, grasshoppers are decidedly terrestrial creatures. So, how does a water-dwelling worm complete its life cycle using a land-based host? Ingenious, albeit horrifyingly for the grasshopper. The juvenile horsehair worm infects the grasshopper when it drinks contaminated water or eats an infected insect. Inside the grasshopper's body, the worm grows, and grows, and grows, often reaching lengths several times that of its host. Imagine having a sentient strand of linguine wriggling around inside you, making itself at home and growing to an absurd size. Uncomfortable, right? But the real fun begins when the worm is ready to move on. Through some still mysterious mechanism, the parasitic worm hijacks the grasshopper's brain, compelling it to seek out water. This isn't just a thirst thing, it's a full-blown irresistible urge to plunge into the nearest puddle, stream, or pond. Once the grasshopper is submerged, the horsehair worm bursts out of its abdomen in a truly gruesome exit, leaving behind a lifeless husk. The worm then happily swims off to find a mate, completely unbothered by the trail of suicidal grasshoppers it leaves in its wake. So, the next time you see a grasshopper acting a little erratic near a water source, it might not just be having a bad day. It might be under the influence of a very determined, and very long, puppet master. Number 6. The Rabid reality. We've all seen the movies, foaming at the mouth, aggressive behavior, an insatiable urge to bite. Rabies, caused by the lysovirus, is the stuff of nightmares, and for good reason. While it might not turn you into a shambling undead creature in the traditional zombie sense, it certainly does a number on the brain, turning otherwise docile animals and sometimes humans, unfortunately, into unpredictable and dangerous vectors of disease. The virus typically spreads through the saliva of an infected animal, usually via a bite. Once inside a new host, the virus begins its insidious journey, traveling along the nerves to the brain, and that's where the real mayhem starts. Rabies primarily affects the parts of the brain that control emotions and behavior. This can lead to a terrifying array of symptoms, including increased aggression, irritability, confusion, hallucinations, and that classic hydrophobia, a fear of water due to painful throat spasms when trying to swallow. Think about it from the virus's perspective if you dare. Its goal is to spread. What better way to do that than to make its host bite other potential hosts? The aggressive behavior, the excessive salivation, it's all part of the virus's twisted strategy for survival. The tragic irony is that rabies is almost always fatal once symptoms appear, making the infected animal a ticking time bomb of contagion. Thankfully, modern medicine has developed effective vaccines for both humans and animals, a crucial defense against this real-life, albeit non-undead form of zombieism. So, while you might not see hordes of rabid squirrels clawing at your door, the threat of this mind-altering virus is very real, and a stark reminder that nature can be far more terrifying than fiction. Number 5. The Emerald Jewel Wasp's Diabolical Delivery. Cockroaches. Most people's reaction ranges from mild disgust to outright panic, but for the Emerald Jewel Wasp Ampullix compressor, these resilient insects are not a nuisance. They are mobile nurseries. This parasitoid wasp has a truly disturbing method of ensuring its offspring have a fresh living food source. It's like something straight out of a sci-fi horror film, but instead of aliens, it's a surprisingly beautiful, metallic blue-green wasp with a penchant for brain surgery. The wasp's mission begins with the hunt. Once a cockroach is located, the wasp engages in a swift and precise attack. It doesn't just sting randomly. Oh no, this is a carefully calculated two-pronged assault. The first sting targets the cockroach's thoracic ganglion, temporarily paralyzing its front legs. This gives the wasp time for the main event, a second, far more delicate sting directly into the cockroach's brain. This brain sting is where things get truly sinister. The wasp doesn't kill the cockroach. It essentially turns it into a docile, living zombie. The venom blocks the cockroach's escape reflexes, its will to resist. It's still capable of movement, but it no longer has the urge to run away or defend itself. It becomes, in essence, a remote-controlled cockroach, perfectly compliant to the wasp's will. And what is the wasp's will? To lead its zombified cockroach to a pre-dug burrow. The wasp grabs one of the cockroach's antennae and literally walks it, like a tiny six-legged pet, to the prepared nest. Once inside, the wasp lays a single egg on the cockroach's abdomen and then seals the burrow. The cockroach, still alive but completely under the wasp's influence, will remain there. When the wasp larva hatches, it has a fresh, immobile food source to feast upon, eventually consuming the cockroach completely before emerging as a new emerald jewel wasp, ready to continue this gruesome cycle. Talk about a truly horrifying form of parental care. Number 4. The gut-wrenching guiding star. Imagine you're a tiny crustacean, happily scuttling along, minding your own business. Suddenly, a bright orange spot appears in your eye stalk. At first it's just a visual anomaly, but then it starts to grow, taking over your entire eye. Congratulations, you just become a mobile billboard for a parasitic copepod from the genus Ant-agonizing, and things are about to get weird, even for a parasite. These copepods have a particularly unsettling way of ensuring their survival and reproduction. They target copepods living in the deep sea, far from the sunlit surface. Now, deep-sea creatures have all sorts of bizarre adaptations to cope with the darkness, but a giant, brightly colored parasite growing out of their eye usually isn't one of them. The female Ant-agonizing copepod latches onto the eye of its host and begins to grow, eventually replacing the entire eyeball with its own bright orange body. Why orange? Scientists believe this vibrant color acts as a lure, attracting male copepods in the dark abyss. Think of it as a parasitic dating profile, broadcasting its availability on the unfortunate host's face. But here's the truly stomach-churning part. The male copepods, drawn to the glowing beacon, then proceed to mate with the female Ant-agonizing while she's still attached to the host's eye. The host, meanwhile, is likely not having a great time, lugging around a giant, brightly colored parasite that has replaced one of its sensory organs and is now serving as a single spa for other parasites. It's a truly bizarre and somewhat horrifying example of how parasites can manipulate their hosts, not just for their own survival, but for their reproductive needs as well. So, the next time you're complaining about a pimple, just be thankful it's not a parasitic dating advertisement growing out of your eyeball. Number 3. The tongue-tied isopod. Ever had something so gross happen that you just wish you could unsee it? Well, prepare to have that feeling amplified. Meet Suicidal Grasshopper, a parasitic isopod with a truly unique and deeply unsettling lifestyle. This tiny crustacean has a penchant for fish tongues, and its method of taking up residence is the stuff of nightmares. The life cycle of Suicidal Grasshopper begins with a free-swimming larva. Once it finds a suitable fish host, it typically enters through the gills. From there it makes its way to the fish's mouth and attaches itself to the tongue. Now, this isn't just a casual hangout. The isopod begins to feed on the blood flowing to the tongue, and as it feeds, something truly bizarre happens. The tongue starts to atrophy and eventually withers away completely. But Suicidal Grasshopper isn't finished yet. Once the original tongue is gone, the isopod takes its place. It essentially becomes the fish's new, albeit crustacean-based tongue. The fish can still use it to manipulate food in its mouth, seemingly none the wiser to the fact that it's now sporting a living parasite where its tongue used to be. Think about that for a moment. You're a fish, swimming along, and a little bug crawls into your mouth, eats your tongue, and then becomes your new tongue. It's like something out of a particularly gruesome body horror film, and the isopod just hangs out there living its best life, feeding on the fish's mucus and effectively becoming a permanent resident of its mouth. It's a truly remarkable, if deeply disturbing, adaptation. So, the next time you're enjoying a fish fillet, maybe take a moment to appreciate the fact that its former owner likely had a much more intimate relationship with the crustacean than you ever will. Number 2. The snail's psychedelic eyes. You know those cartoon characters with their eyeballs popping out on springs? Well, for some unfortunate snails, that's not too far from reality, thanks to the parasitic flatworm Leucocoloidium paradoxum. These parasites have a truly flamboyant and manipulative way of completing their life cycle, turning their snail hosts into bizarre, wriggling advertisements for hungry birds. The flatworm's life begins in the digestive system of a bird. Its eggs are then excreted in the bird's feces. If a snail happens to ingest these droppings, the larval stage of the flatworm takes up residence inside the snail's digestive tract. So far, so standard parasite behavior. But then things take a decidedly psychedelic turn. The parasitic larvae migrate to the snail's eye stalks, those little tentacles with the eyes at the end. Once there, they begin to develop into sporocysts, elongated, pulsating sacs filled with hundreds of cercaria, the next larval stage of the flatworm, and this is where the manipulation gets truly impressive. The sporocysts pulsate with vibrant green and yellow bands, mimicking the appearance of juicy caterpillars or grubs, a favorite snack of birds. The infected snail, with its now brightly colored and wriggling eye stalks, becomes incredibly conspicuous. Instead of blending in with its surroundings, it looks like a tempting treat wiggling on a leaf. Birds, naturally drawn to the caterpillar-like appearance, swoop down and eat the snail's eye stalks, complete with their parasitic payload. The flatworms then mature into adults in the bird's gut, ready to start the cycle anew. It's a truly ingenious, albeit gruesome, example of a parasite hijacking its host's appearance and behavior to attract its next target. So, the next time you see a snail, take a close look at its eye stalks. If they're looking a little too vibrant and wiggly, you might be witnessing nature's own bizarre light show, courtesy of a mind-controlling flatworm. Number 1. The ant-agonizing fungus strikes again. You thought we were done with mind-controlling fungi. Think again, because the Cordyceps genus is a regular Cirque du Soleil of parasitic manipulation, and we'd be remiss not to delve into another truly unsettling example. This time we're focusing on a specific species that targets carpenter ants, turning them into what can only be described as biological alarm clocks for fungal spores. Just like its cousin we discussed earlier, this Cordyceps fungus infiltrates the ant's body and hijacks its nervous system. But the manipulation here has a particularly morbidly precise timing. The infected ant is compelled to leave its nest and climb to a high vantage point, typically a stem or the underside of a leaf, at a specific time of day, usually around noon, when temperature and humidity levels are optimal for fungal spore dispersal. Once the ant reaches its predetermined execution site, the fungus forces it to bite down hard on a vein or edge, anchoring itself firmly in place. Then, like something straight out of a horror movie, a stalk-like fruiting body erupts from the ant's head. This stalk then releases a shower of infectious spores, raining down on unsuspecting ants below, ready to continue the cycle of zombification. What's particularly chilling about this is the level of control the fungus exerts. It's not just random manipulation. It's a precisely timed sequence of behaviors designed to maximize the fungus's reproductive success. The ant becomes a mere puppet, its final act in life serving only to spread the fungal plague to its colony mates. It's a stark reminder of the unseen battles being waged in the natural world, where parasites wield incredible power over their hosts, turning them into unwilling pawns in their bizarre and often gruesome life cycles. That's it for today. I've got more videos like this coming soon, so make sure to subscribe and stay tuned.